You want a kingdom? Well, I've found it. From icy wastelands and abandoned forts to sandbars nobody's watching, this list is weirder than you'd think. I'm Mike with List 25, and today I'm counting down 25 unclaimed lands you can actually rule. Starting with an icy no man's land you might just be able to turn into a kingdom. If you've got big dreams, like continent-sized dreams, Byrd land might be your shot. It is the largest unclaimed territory on Earth. It's nature at its finest, cleanest, and probably quietest. But it has a downside. There is a 2.5-mile thick sheet of ice. Buried deep in Antarctica between the Ross Shelf and Ross Sea, it's so cold and remote that even countries with Antarctic research stations want nothing to do with it. One guy did try, though. In 2001, Travis McHenry claimed it as the Protectorate of West Arctica and sent letters to everyone in the Antarctic Treaty. No one replied. So technically, it's still up for grabs. Then again, why claim a frozen desert when there's already a fully functioning country pretending that it's not a country? Somaliland walks and talks like a country. It just isn't officially allowed to be one. Tucked into the Horn of Africa, this 68,000 square mile region broke away from Somalia in 1991 and never looked back. It's got its own government, currency, elections, and army. The people even vote in democratic elections. It's recognized by a few other unrecognized or partially recognized states like Taiwan, but the UN still calls it Somalia. So what you've got is a fully functioning nation stuck in legal limbo, home to about 6 million people who operate like a country, even if the rest of the world pretends they don't exist. Could you fly to Hargeisa, claim leadership, and start running things? Well, maybe. Nobody else is officially in charge, but nobody's handing out recognition papers either. Which is still more than Bir Tawil has. It can't even get rejected properly. Bir Tawil is a 770 square mile stretch of desert between Egypt and Sudan that neither country wants. And not in a passive way. Both governments have actively renounced it. It's uninhabited, ungoverned, and as The Guardian put it, the last truly unclaimed land on Earth. It has clearly drawn borders. What it doesn't have is a government, a flag, or anyone actually claiming it. One American explorer famously hiked in, planted a flag, and declared it a kingdom. Egypt let him pass, but didn't care enough to respond. And since no law recognizes his claim, the land's still free for anyone brave or bored enough to try again. Or maybe land's just too predictable. How about ruling something that floats? Let's say you're more of a cold-hearted monarch in every sense of the word. You could claim an iceberg. These massive chunks of ice break off from glaciers and drift through international waters completely unowned. You'd be able to make all the laws, define all the borders, and on the plus side, you wouldn't have to deal with irritating neighbors. Yes, they're unstable and prone to melting, but so are plenty of world governments. So yes, if you find one that won't flip or vanish, feel free to crown yourself ruler of Driftovia. But if your royal ambitions prefer sand to ice, there's a sunnier option waiting off the coast of Belize. Northeast Caye is a tiny 2-acre island floating in a lagoon about 8 miles from the Belizean coast. It has little to no infrastructure, but what it does have is a for sale sign. Listed at under $500,000, it's one of those rare spots where you could actually buy your own land, move in, and start waving a flag. Now, Belizean law still applies, for now, but the property listing itself half jokes that secession is an option. If it's just creative marketing, who knows? But if you're looking to start your own island nation with nothing but boat access and a hammock, well, this one's definitely within your reach. However, if your dream nation needs rivers instead of oceans, there's a stretch of Europe where nobody's watching the borders. In an area of the Danube River, right between Croatia and Serbia, are a handful of tiny floodplain enclaves that neither country wants to claim. The biggest is Gornja Siga, a 2.7 square mile patch of land just sitting there. Serbia says it's not theirs. Croatia says it is Serbia's. And while they argue, no one's actually governing it. There are 4 of these pockets in total, each one overlooked and left hanging while border negotiations drag on. The land's there, the paperwork isn't. And for now, that's what makes them interesting. You might not be able to build a palace just yet, but if you're patient and persuasive, you'll probably find a path to ownership buried somewhere in the bureaucracy. Of course, You could wait years for borders to get sorted, or you could just buy something that's already for sale. Off the coast of Sicily, just 300 meters from Palermo, sits Isola delle Femmine, a 34-acre island that's not just scenic, it's on the market. It's a rocky outcropping of land full of Mediterranean charm that comes with a crumbling old watchtower and a whole lot of potential for someone with the budget and a flair for the historical drama. While it's technically Italian territory, private islands like this can be sold, owned, and developed within limits. You won't be starting your own country exactly, but you could own an island, preserve the ruins, and maybe even slap your name on a plaque at the gate. Still, if real islands feel a little too mainstream, maybe it's time to rule one that kind of doesn't exist. Null Island isn't land. In fact, it's not even an island. It's the exact spot where the equator and prime meridian intersect. 0 degrees north, 0 degrees east, smack bang in the middle of the Gulf of Guinea. When GPS devices glitch or coordinates go missing, this is the location they default to. The whole thing actually started as a joke, but there is something out there. A lonely weather buoy called Station 13010. So yes, if your dream is less castle and crown and more glitch in the Matrix, you could absolutely claim Null Island as your digital dominion. On the other hand, not all imaginary countries stay imaginary. In 2015, Vít Jedlička, a Czech politician, spotted a 75 square kilometer piece of unclaimed forest between Croatia and Serbia. He moved in, planted a flag, and declared it the Free Public of Liberland. His goal? A libertarian haven with no taxes, minimal laws, and total freedom. It attracted headlines, critics, and nearly 20,000 citizenship applications in its first year. Croatia wasn't amused. Within a month, they blocked access to the area, detained all the would-be settlers, and made it illegal to enter. Legal debates have dragged on ever since, and Liberland remains unrecognized, but not inactive. Jedlička still travels the world promoting his nation, which now runs on Bitcoin and carries the motto, "Live and let live." Just don't try visiting. You'll probably get arrested. Now, not every would-be ruler gets blocked by Border Patrol. Some just build a country one beach hut at a time. In the 70s, a man named Eli Avivi stumbled across an abandoned fishing village in northern Israel just outside Nahariya and decided to stay. When the Israeli government tried to bulldoze his home, Avivi did what any free-spirited dissenter might do. He declared independence and founded Akhzivland. He held an election, voted for himself, and became president of a one-man nation. For years, Eli and his wife welcomed guests, issued passports, and ran their own country. Eventually, Israel let him lease the land for 99 years, and then Avivi died. The lease still stands, the land's still there, and nobody's out there rushing to shut it down. So, if you've got a bohemian streak and a love of Mediterranean sunsets, who's to say that you couldn't pick up where you left off? And if you'd prefer a throne in a war zone? No, there's a corridor for that. The Philadelphi Corridor is a narrow 14-kilometer buffer zone wedged between Egypt and Gaza. It was created as a part of a peace treaty in 1979 to keep things calm, or at least less chaotic. But over the years, it turned into a hotspot for underground tunnels, smuggling routes, and a lot of please don't go there energy. Israel pulled out in 2005, and Egypt took over monitoring duties. That held until early 2024, when Israel reportedly re-entered the area. That decision did not go over well, and it's once again causing a diplomatic headache. So, you probably won't be founding a kingdom there. But if you're into border politics and everything for desert standoffs, well, this one's definitely worth looking at. Either way, it might be safer to skip the conflict entirely and rule 3 duck-covered islands in the middle of a city pond. Yeah, really. The Grand Duchy of the Lagoan Isles consists of 3 tiny islands in Baffin's Pond, Portsmouth, UK. In 2005, a guy named Lewis Stevens realized the city never officially claimed them when the surrounding park was sold in 1912. So naturally, he declared himself Grand Duke, designed a flag, printed banknotes, and claimed sovereignty. The duchy didn't exactly make headlines, and eventually Stevens gave up the title. Today, the islands are once again unclaimed, uninhabited, and just sitting there. You might also be thinking bigger, like ocean-sized. Once you're 200 nautical miles from any coastline, you've officially entered international waters, aka the high seas. Nobody owns them. No government controls them. And while maritime law still applies, it's the closest thing we've got to a global free-for-all. That's why some dreamers, and a few billionaires, have floated the idea of seasteading, building permanent floating cities out in the open water. You can't legally claim sovereignty, but you can live off-grid, fly your own flag, and test out your own weird little utopia, assuming you've got a ship, food, money, and a very good lawyer. If you're not afraid of storms, salt, and pirates, well, they're as close to ungoverned as it gets. Kind of sounds like Rapture, if you ask me. We should probably also check out the one place where monarchy meets niche tourism. Eastern Czechia is home to a 16th century chateau on 7.5 acres, complete with passports, police, courts, currency, and even a national anthem. It's called the Other World Kingdom, and for just 8 million euros, it could be yours. But hold on, there's a catch. It was founded as a private BDSM resort, run as a matriarchy by Queen Patricia I. Yeah. The Czech government never recognized it as a real state, but it didn't exactly shut it down either. It operated for a decade, closed its doors, and has been sitting on the market ever since. So yeah, kingdom for sale, guys. Or ladies, I don't judge. Anyway, if you prefer your territory cold, wet, and barely big enough to stand on, there's always Rockall. This lonely chunk of volcanic rock sits in the North Atlantic, about 230 miles off the coast of Scotland. It's just 82 feet wide and 56 feet tall and completely uninhabited. Unless you count seabirds. The UK claimed it in 1955, but Ireland never agreed. Iceland and the Faroe Islands could probably argue that it belongs to them too. Either way, nobody's built anything on it. For the moment, it's only being used to break records. And fun fact, the current champ stayed there for 43 days. It's not much to look at, but hey, some people have claimed land with less. Alright, since we're already in cold, remote, and legally murky territory, you might be interested to know that eastern Greenland also fits the bill. You see, in 1931, Norway decided that the uninhabited eastern side of Greenland should be theirs. They marched in, staked a claim, and called it Eric the Red's Land, because nothing apparently says legitimacy by naming it after a Viking. The locals, and the Permanent Court of International Justice, didn't see it that way. Denmark, who controls Greenland, pushed back, and Norway eventually had to drop the whole thing and go home. But that was over 80 years ago. Today, the land is still wild, mostly empty, and yes, claimed, depending on who you ask. But if you show up with a good attitude, some decent cheese, and maybe a few cases of beer, who knows? Moving on. If a kingdom's off the table, how would you feel about a lordship instead? Ailsa Crag is a 220-acre volcanic island sitting between Scotland and Ireland, a massive rock jutting over 1,100 feet above sea level. It comes with ruins, a lighthouse, a cottage, and about 36,000 gannets. Price tag? £1.5 million. It's completely empty, and its former owner passed away in 2015. That means, if you bought it, there's not much stopping you from declaring yourself ruler. Just know that the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds might have a few opinions about your house plans. That said, the island is home to a very rare granite that gets used in curling stones, and a quarry deal with Caye's Curling is already in place. So even if your kingdom's small, it might just pay for itself. Which brings me to Antarctica. Not a specific place this time, but the entire icy deal. Antarctica isn't claimed by any one nation. Under the Antarctic Treaty, it's designed as a global research zone. But that doesn't have to stop us from dreaming, right? If you got a ship and the right gear, you can land just about anywhere that's not a research base and plant your flag. It won't be legally recognized, but the treaty doesn't say you can't pretend. Some people have actually proposed everything from micronations to full-on South Pole empires. And while none of them stuck, obviously, well, the ice is still there, waiting. Just be warned. Sub-zero temperatures are not that great for nation building. There's also a tropical island that looks like paradise, until you meet the neighbors. South Sentinel Island sits in the Bay of Bengal, and it comes with all-white beaches, palm trees, and crystal blue water. It's forested, uninhabited, and technically part of India, but treated like a hands-off zone because of its proximity to another famous spot. So yeah, on paper, it's available. You can sail over, raise a flag, and call yourself king or queen. The problem is that it's close to North Sentinel Island. It's home to the isolated Sentinelese, an uncontacted tribe that's made it very clear They want no visitors. And by clear, I mean they have killed people for trying. So while South Sentinel looks tempting, it might be the world's most dangerous beachfront property. Hey, you could always go interstellar. The moon can't be claimed by countries. The Outer Space Treaty made sure of that in 1967. But when it comes to individuals, things get interesting. Okay, so legally fuzzy might be a better description, but if you've got a big imagination, a decent printer, and a flair for dramatic declarations, well, nothing's stopping you from claiming a crater or two. One guy actually did it, Dennis Hope, and made a fortune selling completely worthless novelty deeds. So if you want to launch your own lunar empire, you don't need tanks, just stationary and confidence. Worst case, you get a great story. Best case, you're the proud owner of Tranquility Base, pending approval from absolutely no one. But if the moon feels a little too far, and you like your land hot, dry, and full of history, there's a desert you could look at. The Indus Valley Desert covers almost 20,000 square kilometers of sand, scrub, and silence. On paper, yes, it belongs to Pakistan, but the government presence is so light that it's basically off the radar. There are no cities here, barely any roads, and most of the land is uninhabited. In short, I'd say it's the kind of place where nothing much happens, which might be perfect if you're looking for space to start something weird. You can't legally claim it, but if you set up camp far enough from everything and start printing passports, well, stranger things have happened on maps. Just bring water. Lots and lots of water. There's also the option to stage an invasion. The Principality of Sealand has survived 2 of them. It's not even on land. It sits on an old World War II sea fort 8 miles off the Suffolk coast. It was formed in the 60s when Roy Bates, after getting in trouble for pirate radio broadcasts, moved his station there and declared independence. He never restarted the station. I mean, running a micronation ultimately turned out to be a full-time job. Who knew? Especially after a rival station tried to take it by force. That was the first invasion. The second came in 1978 when a German businessman who bought the title of Prime Minister decided to launch a coup. It ended with a hostage crisis, a counterattack by Bates' son, now known as Prince Michael, and a German diplomat trying to clean up the mess. Today, nobody lives there full time. So in theory, you can invade it. Again, if you want. Or hey, there's always space debris fields. I know, I'm losing the plot, but hear me out. Earth's orbit is packed with abandoned satellites, busted rocket parts, and the occasional untethered wrench. None of it is owned, unless the space agency still tracks it or plans to scoop it up. And let's be honest, most of it's just drifting. So if you made it up there and docked with a piece of debris, you could claim it as your orbital territory. There's no law saying you can't. There's just no one around to really care or stop you. You wouldn't be the first to stake a claim in the void, but you might be the first to do it in a tin can with a flag and a VPN. On the other side of space, you'll find something far less glamorous, and technically, just as unclaimed. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is a swirling mass of plastic waste drifting between California and Hawaii, and no country has ever stepped forward to claim it. I mean, Sealand's the size of a sea fort, and it has a flag, it prints, and postage stamps. The Garbage Patch is bigger than Texas, so you do the math. In 2013, a group of environmentalists declared it the Nation of Trash Isle and even petitioned the UN for recognition. It was half stunt, half statement, but theoretically, not wrong. So if you're environmentally inclined and don't mind the smell of floating flip-flops, and bringing this list to a close, how about a fortress with a ticking clock? There is a part of Fort St. Angelo in the Maltese town of Birgu, which sits in a strange sort of limbo. It sits firmly within the European Union, and yet it's currently leased out to the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, a UN-recognized entity with no actual land of its own. They got the lease back in 1998, and it'll run for 99 years with a review scheduled for 2047. So for now, the Knights run the show, but in a few decades, that might change. If you're patient and very rich, there's a chance to swoop in and claim a slice of sovereign history. After all, it's not every day you get the chance to become king of a literal medieval fortress. And, well, that's a wrap. So, if you could be bothered to actually claim one of these places, which would it be? Frozen wasteland? Floating plastic kingdom? Medieval fortress with questionable paperwork? Drop your pick and your new title in the comments. I'm curious, and definitely reading. And if you want another video on places that don't quite play by the rules, check out our related video, 25 of the most bizarre towns on Earth. I covered everything, from a town where no one's allowed to die, to a Soviet village that still doesn't officially exist. You'll love it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit subscribe and that notification bell, and I'll see you again next time. I'm going to become king of something.